François-Marie Arouet, pen name Voltaire. Voltaire was born in Paris in 1694 to a wealthy middle-class family. His father, François Arouet, was a legal notary and later served as clerk of the audit court. His mother, Marie Marguerite Dumas, came from a noble family in the Poitou province. Voltaire was educated at the Jesuits in Paris and then at the Lycée Louis the Great. In 1715, Voltaire was exiled to Surrey for writing a poem satirizing the then regent, the Duke of Orleans. In 1717, he was thrown into the Bastille and imprisoned for 11 months for writing satirical poems alluding to the promiscuous life in the court. While in prison, Voltaire completed his first play, the tragedy Oedipus Rex, about Philip II, regent of Louis XVI. In this work he used Voltaire as a pen name for the first time, which came from the name of a castle in his hometown in southern France. Shortly after Voltaire was released in 1718, his play Oedipus Rex was performed in Paris and was a great success. In 1726, Voltaire was insulted and falsely accused by the nobleman de Rohan, and was once again thrown into the Bastille for a year. After his release from prison, Voltaire was deported and went into exile in England. Voltaire had always been a firm believer in freedom of religious belief, but when he was approaching his 70s, several shocking incidents of persecution of Protestants occurred in France. Exasperated, he devoted himself to an intellectual crusade against religious fanaticism. He wrote many political pamphlets attacking religious intolerance. He also liked to end each of his handwritten letters with "Erasez infame." It means to destroy what is notorious. For Voltaire, this notoriety was religious bigotry and fanaticism. On February 10, 1778, when the 84-year-old Voltaire returned to Paris after an absence of 29 years, he was warmly welcomed by the people. This was the most glorious peak of Voltaire's life development. Soon he fell ill and died in the same year. Before his death, Voltaire made instructions for his funeral. Half of the coffin should be buried in the church and half outside the church. This means that if God lets him go to heaven, he can go to heaven from the church. If God lets him go to hell, he can sneak away quietly from the other end of the coffin. After Voltaire's death, he was still persecuted by the church, so his body had to be secretly transported to Champagne and placed in a small chapel. It was not until the French Revolution in 1791 that the people transported his body to the capital and rode on his hearse. He taught us to go to freedom. His ashes have since been laid to rest in the Pantheon in Paris, and he will always be remembered and admired by people from all over the world. People affectionately called him the spiritual prince. Voltaire was a champion of enlightenment, fighting for freedom of thought and speech throughout his life, and living an independent life relying on his pen. French writer Victor Hugo once commented on Voltaire, "He is not just a person, he is an entire era." After the victory of the French Revolution, the overthrown Emperor Louis XVI read Voltaire and Rousseau in prison and sighed. It was these two people who destroyed France. Let us appreciate the wise words left to us by this spiritual prince. Life lies in movement. I don't agree with your views, but I will defend to the death your right to speak. If God did not exist, then it would be necessary to create one. A few bites from flies can never detain a galloping horse. Labor is the source of happiness. There is as much nobleness in love as there is tenderness, and as much an upward force as a debilitating force. It can sometimes inspire other virtues. A lot of stupid things come from people who mean to say something smart. What makes people tired is not the mountains in the distance, but the grain of sand in the shoes. Human beings are born for action. Just like fire always rises upward and stones always fall. For a person, once he does not act, it means he does not exist. Humans are usually like dogs. When they hear a dog barking in the distance, they bark too. Books make people's minds brighter. When a person has nothing to say, he must say it very poorly. After the lightning, there will be thunder. There is no such thing as fate. Everything is nothing but a test, punishment, or compensation. Talent is continuous endurance. The power of talent is greater than the power of education. Reading the masterpieces of famous authors can help you develop eloquence. A small man is arrogant, and the sound of small water is loud. When you put all your hopes on the line, failure is inevitable. When we read a good book for the first time, we feel as if we have found a friend. When we read this good book again, we feel as if we are meeting an old friend again. Arrogance is just a mask of ignorance. A great cause requires perseverance. Mediocrity and genius are incompatible. What is tolerance? Tolerance is an accessory of human nature. We are full of weaknesses and mistakes. Let us forgive each other for our follies. The more you read without thinking, the more you will think you know a lot. And the more you read without thinking, the more clearly you will see how little you know. The causes of decadence are doing things that are too easy, being too lazy to do things well, appreciating too much art, and liking weird and unusual things. Friendship is a union of souls. Life is a sinking ship, but let us not forget to sing on the lifeboat. History is ultimately just a series of tricks we play on the dead. We falsify the past to suit our hopes for the future, and ultimately, history proves that all events can be proven by history. For Adam, heaven was his home, and for his descendants, home is heaven. Prudence is good for oneself, virtue is good for others. Prejudice is the ruler of fools. It is human nature to chase what flies away from him, but to run away from what chases him. Life is full of thorns, and the only way we know is to quickly step over those thorns. Our time on this earth is too short to crawl under the feet of despicable villains. Rest is a good thing, but idleness is its brother. When an avalanche occurs, no snowflake feels responsible. A family without books is like a house without windows. A person often has to die twice, no longer loving, no longer being loved. A learned fool is far more stupid than an ignorant fool. There are plenty of people in this world who are not worth talking to. This is my heart, but my spirit is everywhere. Self-esteem is an inflated balloon. A slight needle prick can create a big storm. Nothing is the longest thing, because it is endless. Nothing is the shortest thing, because all plans will not be completed in time. To those who are waiting, time is the slowest. To those who are enjoying, time is the fastest. The secret to being an annoying person is to tell people everything. Only philosophers are qualified to write history. In all countries, history has been distorted by empty stories, until finally philosophers came to enlighten people. When they finally reach the darkness, they discover that the human mind has been blinded by errors for centuries and find it difficult to wake up. They find celebrations, facts, and monuments piled high and low just to prove the lie. Man is a stranger to himself. He does not know where he comes from, nor where he is going. Tormented by misery, lying on a bed of mud for it, swallowed by death, became the laughingstock of life. Our existence is one with the infinite, which we ourselves have never discovered and do not know. Truth with doubt is better than error without doubt. Natural human rights, inalienable. To judge beauty, one must have a cultivated mind. Justice is not the highest criterion of morality, but the only criterion of morality. Gentle feelings, like the morning breeze, bring hope for the day. Happiness does not lie in enjoying more, but in caring less. Time is the author of life. It writes all the stories for us. I cannot agree with every word you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Appearance, beauty can only please people's eyes, but inner beauty can infect people's soul. If you shake your head in the face of difficulties, you have no right to nod and smile in the face of victory. There will be no great cause without great difficulties. All people are born equal, but they are all in chains. All of us have faults and mistakes, and it is the first law of nature for us to forgive each other our follies. The secret to annoying people is to say everything. Truth is a fruit that must be ripe before it can be picked. A prudent person is good for himself, and a virtuous person is good for others. Selfishness will always exist. Humanity's most precious treasure is hope, which relieves our distress and paints a vision of fun in the midst of enjoying the present. Telling one's true thoughts is a great comfort in life. Being eloquent doesn't prove anything. If a person does not have the charm of his age, he will also have various misfortunes specific to his age. Feelings are by no means subjective and self-generated, but the result of external objects acting on the senses. When people argue about something, it means that they themselves still don't understand it clearly. This world, this arena of pride and falsehood, is full of pathological fools talking about happiness. Generally speaking, different misfortunes create happiness. Therefore, the more frequent misfortunes happen, the better it is. It is not that career is for thought, but that thought is for career. The first king of mankind was a successful soldier. A national hero does not need to have glorious ancestors. Ideas not only come from sensations, but are conditioned by them. The more sensations there are, the more ideas there are, and one cannot have any idea of a thing without feeling it. Virtue and vice, moral good and evil, are all behaviors that are beneficial or harmful to society. At any place and in any era, those who make the greatest sacrifice for the public welfare are called the most moral people. Thoughts are like beards. They cannot grow if they are not mature. The more you read without thinking, the more you will think you know a lot, and the more you read without thinking, the more clearly you will see how little you know. To succeed in this world, you must persevere to the end. The sword cannot leave your hand until death. Adhering to a great cause requires an unswerving spirit. The mind resides in the body, but even so, the strongest person is not necessarily a great thinker. There is great satisfaction in discovering new things and making new discoveries. No matter which category of human beings, they are better than the lazy race. The secret to being a boring man is to tell everything. Originality is not observing something new for the first time. The world is a huge temple to the God of discord. People use thoughts only to cover up mistakes, but words are used to cover up thoughts. Common sense is not something everyone knows. Common things. Self-love is a tool we must treasure. It seems to be an eternal standby needed by human beings. It is very necessary, very precious. It brings us joy. Therefore, we must treasure it. The secret to being an annoying person is to tell others everything. Anyone who tries to teach his fellow men the truth will be persecuted unless he is the strongest. Yet the strongest almost always strengthen the chains of ignorance rather than break them. Protracted arguments mean both sides are wrong. Ignorance is the only soil for tyranny. Being too famous is a heavy burden. True geniuses can make mistakes with impunity. That is their prerogative. He that maketh thee ridiculous shall make thee cruel. One day, everything will be fine. This is called expectation. Today, everything will be fine. This is called illusion. God punished the villains and the devil drowned the innocent. Laughter can defeat everything. It is the most powerful weapon. Appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes the best of others our own. If you want to know who controls you, look at the people you cannot criticize. Marriage is the only venture for timid people to attempt. Strong confidence can enable ordinary people to do amazing things. Generally speaking, misfortune in its various forms creates happiness. Therefore, the more frequent misfortunes happen, the better it is. When fairness reaches its extreme, it becomes an extreme insult.